Hello, I'm Claire Poole and welcome to the Climate of Sport podcast, the show in which you get the inside track on all things sport and sustainability globally. Join me every week where I'll be chatting to a special guest about news, opinion and insights on how sport is moving to a more environmentally friendly future or taking action on climate change. Hi everyone and welcome to the Climate of Sport podcast. Joining me today is Hattie Park, Sustainability Manager of the All England Lawn Tennis Club and Wimbledon. Hattie, welcome.
Good morning, Claire. Welcome to Wimbledon.
Thank you very much. So it's wonderful to be with you here during the championship. First of all, I want to ask you to do an introduction for anyone who's listening who hasn't heard of you and your work and what you do.
What brought us to be sitting on this rooftop during the Wimbledon Championships and me doing my dream job, I suppose.
Yeah.
I joined Wimbledon in February 2019 after almost 9 years at the BBC as sustainability manager. So I suppose I came into this from a corporate sustainability point of view rather than a sport point of view. But, you know, I love Wimbledon. I play tennis. I swing a racket quite badly. And so it's just been incredible to combine, you know, my love of tennis and sport with where I'd wanted to take my career professionally. And I sort of switched career, did a master's in 2006 at Imperial College Environmental Technology because I knew I wanted to do something that I cared about with my working life. If we've got to work, let's put it, you know, let's do something that makes us feel like we're having a positive impact, I suppose. Yeah. So, yeah, and studying as an adult was quite good fun as well.
I don't know if fun is good for you. Good for you. Fun.
It was
busy. I'd say.
It was a different thing because prior to that, I'd been, you know, when you'd been working, it's a total step change in terms of how you do your work, studying and the research. That was a whole new ball game. But because by that time everything was online. So when I did my first degree, you read a book and then write your essay. This time, you're just so much information out there. But my first degree as well, I was as a geographer, and I wrote my dissertation about how geography was the perfect academic discipline to take advantage of the growing interest in environmentalism. Yeah. So I was already interested in it back then, and then just diverted into doing various other jobs that didn't really mean a lot to me until I, you know, took the decision to requalify. I had a great time at the BBC and now here I am at Wimbledon. So my job at Wimbledon, I'm sustainability manager. Yes. I sit within the estates team, but work right across the organisation. And my role is to kind of come up with what we need to do and then get approval from the executive, from the board, and then work with all of my amazing colleagues to actually deliver against it. And there's the year round, you know, how can we operate our estate? How can we plan our estate to be climate resilient for the future? Yeah. And there's quite a lot involved in that. Yeah. And then you've also got this thing called the championships, which adds a whole other layer of, you know, impact and opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for those who don't know, because I think it's really interesting to chat to you as someone who works for a tournament rather than maybe for a venue or a stadium, you know, where you might have a match every week. You've got a very different role as a sustainability manager because you've got this huge event for 2 weeks a year as opposed to 80 events throughout the years, evenly spaced. So for you, you've mentioned there's some of the things that you do, but what sort of, there probably isn't a typical day, but what's your sort of typical day in 6 months out from the championships when you're in the planning phase?
Oh, well, I suppose 6 months out from the championships will probably more be around our long-term plans for the regeneration of the estate.
Right.
So getting involved with, we have a big project, Wimbledon Park, which is across the road from the main site, a big project there to ultimately bring the qualifying event onto our land holding. But there's, I mean, for me, I love that project and we're awaiting planning. So crossing all fingers that it goes through. But with that, we have this amazing opportunity to, you know, enhance the biodiversity with, you know, working on the Natural England biodiversity net gain metric and delivering at least a 10% gain. And then looking at, you know, sustainable construction, you know, water stewardship. Yeah. So that would be it. But there's always, you know, part of the year, well, a lot of the year, I like to think I'm thinking strategically about what we need to do. during the championships, I'm fishing around in the bins, you know,
full operation mode.
Looking at how people are using the facilities that we provide. So, you know, the aim is to make it as easy for everyone when they come here, and for them to see that, yes, we're taking this seriously, and we're providing you with the exact, you know, recycling facilities, water refills, etc. But I'm watching what people are doing, and I'm certainly not too proud to roll up my sleeves and fish things out of a bin and put it in the right one.
Absolutely. So for the championships then, if you think for the fans coming to Wimbledon, we want to hear about all of the sustainability and biodiversity efforts that you're making for the championship. So for a fan coming, how are they going to experience sustainability as we have done as we walked around the grounds this morning?
So, well, if you were to do a sustainability tour, I think in a way the first thing that I would love people to feel is that one of the things that is really integral to Wimbledon anyway, which is this tennis in an English garden. You know, we present tennis in an English garden, we use a living surface. So what I hope is that people see the planting, you know, the living wall with the pollinating plants, plants with flowers to encourage pollinators. So getting tongue-tied with that. The players have this amazing wildflower bank in the practice courts at Orangi. And if the guests have been through the queue, they will have walked past our centre court themed bug hotel, which was new for this year, which my amazing colleague Andy has hand constructed. So I think, you know, there's the sort of environment and the nature and the plants that hopefully people just feel, you know, I think one of the reasons I wanted to work in this area was because, you know, we all love being outside. We love nature. I used to love walking in the Yorkshire Dales, you know, landscapes, and hopefully people can feel sort of closer to nature here coming to watch the tennis. It can sort of instill a bit more care. And then, you know, all of our drinks are served in reusable cups. So we introduced a reusable cup last year for cold drinks. It's now hot drinks as well. That's going really well. Guests love them. We're getting lots of them back, and you can, if there's a deposit this year, you can donate to charity or redeem your deposit at the bar. Again, that was really working with our commercial partners to be sure that they're, you know, and they were really on board to support us with it as well. So there's lots that goes on behind the scenes in terms of introducing something like that. You know, you need to, the drinks partners need to be aware what we're planning to do and support us. Around the menus, you know, the strawberries come in a card container, that we've really thought about the packaging for the food. And then on the menus this year, we're highlighting the low carbon dishes on the menus. And, you know, that's just part of trying to provide everyone with information so that if they would like to, they can make an informed decision. And also on the menus as well, there are plant-based or vegetarian options across all of our food outlets, and we put those at the top of the menu to just try and that sort of nudge thing. So that's the first thing you see. Racket strings, last year we collected players' racket strings. They are back this year in the form of countertops at a couple of ticket desks. I'm hoping all of my colleagues are out looking at those and seeing how we can use that material in future, because the point of that is to create something useful that we need from something which could be a waste but is actually a resource. The nudge you mentioned, you changed the colours of the bins, and you've seen success with that in terms of... So actually colouring the tops of the bins as well. So we had beautiful signage around the side of the bin, but actually if you're going to put something in, you're looking down. So it's quite simple, but so we've got, and our colour palette lends itself rather well, I think, to recycling in general waste. Green. Purple for the general waste, green for the recycling, green for the reusable cup bins as well. So yes, doing that. Water refills everywhere, so you can bring in your bottle and fill up. Trying to think, you know, the players, we've got electric cars in the player transportation fleet as well. And that can be the first interaction that a player has with us, to be collected in an electric car. It's quite good. So looking forward to getting more of those. Great. Eviana have got a recycling incentive scheme as well. So it's, you know, to just try and encourage people to really think about recycling as the best option.
Yeah.
Once we've done the reuse, we reduce what we can,
yes,
reuse, and then get as much really good quality recycling. And all of the staff here as well, we recruit a lot of staff to the championships. They've all had sustainability training within their orientation as well. So I've stood up in centre court, addressed all of the service stewards, all sitting there with their uniform on, me talking to them about environment positive. And but we want everyone who works here as well, because they're the ambassadors. They engage day to day with the guests that come. I want them to know that we take this really, really seriously. We know they do as well. And so how can they help guests? How can they help them know where to take their reusable cup back, what goes in what bin? Bike parking as well.
Great.
Loads of bike parking in the car park across the road. Need more of that though, much more
to be added.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's so much here in SW19, but also, which we mentioned recently, there's obviously a certain, because of the size of the grounds, growth is going to hit a certain level, and then the grounds are the grounds. And you've got a really interesting initiative in New York.
Yes. Yeah. So that we have taken the Hill to New York.
Yes.
And that's I think we're having the semi-finals and both final matches in New York, and it will be a sort of mirror of if you were watching on Henman Hill here. And I think, perhaps sustainability wasn't the guiding force behind that, but there really is a benefit for us just to see how we can bring the joy of a sporting event to you rather than having, all of the travel for people coming here. And as you say, we reach capacity with the grounds. And that's something that we discussed. We had a panel discussion last week as well. And that was one of the things we discussed there, covered a lot of ground in that discussion. It was really good. We talked about, how athletes can be involved with how climate change is affecting sport, but also just how you can retain the joy, but without the impact. And the Hill's one of those examples. So I can't wait to see, more photographs of everybody in New York sitting there.
Absolutely.
Hopefully with their strawberries.
I was going to say strawberries and cream.
Yes.
And a couple of Pims.
I think so. Or a delicious gin and tonic as well.
Yes.
I think.
So lovely. Whatever drink of choice.
Indeed. Yes.
Or hydrating water.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the Environment Day then, in terms of, you've obviously mentioned there, the last couple of years you've had a sort of environment focused day where every day is Environment Day, we know, but where more industry people have come together and you've discussed different aspects of what, for people who weren't able to be there, what were the big takeaways, or not even, it might not have been a big takeaway, but just something of note or that was mentioned that you thought that's interesting, or that's something we need to think about, or takeaways that you think people might be interested to hear?
Yeah, I mean, we covered a lot in that. I think in a way for me, the big takeaway, and again, why I kind of love my job every day, was the willingness of everyone who came to really engage and contribute. And so we had, the LTA there, ATP, other sports sustainability people, journalists, Laura Robson, ex British #1 tennis player, Melissa Wilson, and everybody with football, people wanted to share, contribute. What can we learn from each other? So, I loved it for that reason. And it were, there were some difficult conversations in there as well. We were challenged about plastic bottles on court, rightly so. That's something, while in the big scheme of things, it's really important that we address it, but there's so much more going on. What do I want to say? I suppose I don't want us to be challenged about plastic bottles on court. And so that's something that we're actively looking at how we can address, talking to Evian about it, and hopefully we can go to refillables on court, because that will be a really powerful message.
Absolutely.
And we talked about travel, so examples like the Hill, and we talked about how we can hopefully, leverage the players more. Adam, who's the commercial director at the O2, was there, and he was talking about recently they'd had Billie Eilish, and part of, in a way, her requirements were we need to get more messaging out there about climate change. So as you arrived at the O2, there were really powerful billboards about how climate change is affecting us. Once inside, all the food was plant-based. And, and it would be amazing to get more of the tennis players involved, pushing us, raising the bar. I think that's what I came away from, is I'm really excited about, how we can work together there. I'm going to be straight on the phone to my lovely friends at the LTA. So what can we do for British tennis? And then, next year amplify that for the global tennis community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much you've mentioned there that I could chat to you about, but I think I do want to come back to just the plastic on court thing, because I think that is something we struggle with across all environmental sustainability in sport, isn't it? Even if it's not that particular issue, we're always pushing against the amount of incredible work that's happening and the reduction that tournaments or stadiums or clubs are making versus the perception of fans and a loud minority in terms of that. And I think that's why I think it's really important, as you've done here, is to talk about it and the work that's going on, because things don't happen overnight, and there are legacy issues that have to be worked through, and we're all on a journey with this stuff, and we have to progress with it. But I think it's an important issue because that your average fan doesn't see all the stuff behind the scenes that goes on, and how actually broadly those plastic bottles are a much smaller impact than the positive impact you've created elsewhere. But it's still an issue that has to be tackled. We're not getting away from that. But I think it's great to talk about it, because I think then it normalizes the fact that we're all everywhere in sport are tackling the same issue.
Yeah, and I mean it's a communication challenge to engage people with the things that they can see and touch and feel and interact with, while still trying to get across the bigger message of, the scale of the challenge and the sense of urgency. And, I would not say that's something we've necessarily got right, as, either here at Wimbledon or as a sports sector or even everywhere. We're all, as you say, we're all struggling with it, but it's, people love the kiosk of the racket strings here. That's been really picked up. We're sitting next to a building that we have. I love this building. Genuinely, I tell everyone about it. I tell everyone about it. It's timber framed, so lower embodied carbon. It's got solar panels, solar light tubes, refurbished furniture. That is sort of an indication from a sort of corporate point of view of our commitment. We are working out how we can build and design things for the future that help us to be more climate resilient. Is anyone interested in that apart from me?
I am.
Thank you, Claire. Yes. And, I think that's brilliant. But the racket string, the ticket resolution kiosk, that's what gets you. So the point being, you have to do everything. As an organization, you've got to have a really thorough framework and an objective, and then hang all of these other things off it. And I hope that people, when they see that ticket resolution kiosk, they don't think, oh, that's all Wimbledon are doing. I hope they see it as a sort of indicator that we are trying to leave no stone unturned, and that we're thinking about it across everything is a resource, so that this building again can be dismantled and lifted and shifted, so retaining the resources that we've used in its construction and using them again.
And I think it's important to note as well, all of this work is, you're doing it because it's incredible and it's the right thing to do, and you're a member of you're a signatory of the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework, and I know you take that very seriously in terms of the advancement there. So where are you at with things in regard to that? So I hate to say what's next when we're sat here and everyone's exhausted after a really busy 2 weeks and the last 12 months and the last 3 years post-COVID. But in line with those commitments, etc., in your work in that area, how do you see things progressing from here?
Well, I think moving to our scope 3. So in terms of what's next, obviously, when I've maybe keeled over and landed on the sofa for an afternoon,
we'll give you a sleep,
and taken my dog for a walk as well. I've got to do my reporting for Lindita.
Yes,
I am. I was meaning
July deadline, isn't it?
I know.
July deadline. Yep.
I was meaning to get on with that during this fortnight, but just haven't really had a chance. No. But for me, I love that framework. Signing up to it was just such a sensible thing to do, and the first part, really making those obvious commitments, cut your own impacts, and use your platform. How can you engage everyone. And be good to come back to that, actually, because we had a sort of campaign during this fortnight.
Oh, good.
But then it's right that the UN are saying, come on, you've got to do a bit more than just making the commitment. So the next stage of it is around actually, providing data. So for me, it's about my wider scope 3 emissions. So, and in the early stages, I will be getting some really robust data. So our food and drink partner provided me with information for the food supply chain, which is great. And I had no idea, what that is in emissions terms. Yeah. Other things will be estimates based on spend, but it will give me a kind of much broader heat map of where our impacts really are. So for scope 3 at the moment, we do an estimate for player travel, tournament officials. Yes. So that forms what we categorize our operational footprint. So the direct operations on site plus player flights and that sort of thing. But for the UN, it's really helpful now that I'm going to get a much better idea of the wider scale of things. And then we can work out where we prioritize our actions and what we go after. And, our overall goal is environment positive. I have to say every single time I'm talking about it, we are not environment positive now. It is a way off, but I think for me, it's a really nice way of hopefully getting people to feel a bit enthusiastic about it, rather than we're going to reduce our impact on the environment. Come with me and let's reduce our impact on the environment, or come with me and let's be positive, like sport positive.
We're all very positive souls. Yeah, but that's I think it's a really important point, because what we don't want to be is less bad. We want to be good, don't we? We want to see improvements and not just reduce our impact. But I'm sure your marketing team and your comms team and your commercial, I'm sure everyone has great aspirations in terms of the future of Wimbledon. But we want, on the environmental side, to be positive. We don't want to be like, how can we make it less bad? Do you? Yeah. And that's the aspiration, which is incredible.
Try ultimately to give back more than we take. Yeah. And whether that is by one of our, so we are sort of 4 pillars of that environment positive approach are, net zero emissions, resource efficiency, biodiversity gain, and using our influence to inspire wider action. And so if we can encourage people to sort of pick up habits when they come here that continue and learn a bit more, then I'm hoping that, our job will never be done, but it will be on the way to being done.
Yeah, amazing. It was wonderful as well, as an aside, to see Cam Norrie do so well this championship after being such an advocate for climate change at the Lawn Tennis Association sustainability. Yeah,
exactly.
Strategy.
And he pedals up here on his bicycle. There's BBC Sport have done a really nice film about the championships and food, actually, and they have got in that interviews quite serendipitously with Djokovic, Kyrgios, and Cam Norrie.
Incredible.
So so Cam Norrie would be my eco pin-up, I think.
Yeah. He said this. I thought he hadn't, before the Lawn Tennis Association launched their sustainability strategy recently, I hadn't seen him be super vocal about it. But then he came out in a really big way around that, and I think that's incredible, because he is such a great player, such a big name, and that's hopefully what we can encourage more of, and see more players doing that as well.
Definitely.
For sure. So we've spoken about the championships and kind of what's happened and what's next, etc. Before we finish off, tell me about your sort of view of the industry from where you sit in terms of UK based tennis, your background, etc. Where do you see the future challenges, or actually the future opportunities, in terms of the sort of lay of the land in terms of sustainability in sport?
Well, I think you have to look at it as opportunities, because really there's so much more to do. I think sport, hasn't really gripped this, I think, in the way that it has the opportunity to do. I think, you can see sports events being impacted by climate, and yet, and I think it's, with all of us, we slightly just carry on. We've got to grip this harder and take more action. And so, the way that sport has this incredible power, which you've addressed loads of times through the podcast, how sport can inspire, how we collectively are so passionate within sport, so there's so much more that we can do. I'd love to see more of the governing bodies really rising to the challenge and pushing, I want to see the athletes, the players pushing the events that they compete at. I want to see the governing bodies, pushing harder as well. I think there's a lot more we need to go further, faster, really.
Absolutely. Recently, we're seeing a lot of organizations talking about net zero, which we're all aiming for in 2040, 2050, aspirational, but we're seeing a lot of tournaments, especially saying they are climate positive or net positive or carbon neutral. Does this concern you in terms of a lot of these terms being thrown around?
It does in a way. I mean, when you're saying it, it does sound a little bit like the Wild West out there, doesn't it? And I think it's because this is all relatively new and young, and so we're all finding our way in terms of how we talk about it. So for me, talking about environment positive, I kind of coined that for us here to use, and I suppose I'm in a way determining where I feel what we need to do to reach that environment positive. Will we ever reach it? So I think guidance, standards, etc., would probably be really helpful. And so again, going back to the UN framework, actually what they're including in terms of net zero for that requirement is helpful, so we can follow that. I think a lot of us, it is young and new, and we're all trying to do what we do in a credible and robust way, and be authentic to ourselves and our organizations, but that's not to say that it is a perfect world out there. And there's you're right to raise it. I think there's room for improvement in terms of how we really keep track of ourselves,
to see how it goes. But I just think it's something I'm hearing a lot more from different sides recently, of like, what does this mean, and how can we communicate this to an audience, the general public who perhaps isn't across this as much as we are, and what's the perception of that?
I think you're so right and it's good that this is being talked about, because we need to get it right for people to understand and feel confident that perhaps the teams that they support are actually doing the right thing.
Absolutely. So to finish off with, what's your big hope for the future for Wimbledon, for sport and sustainability? What, if you could see the future nirvana, what would that look like?
Oh, well, the future nirvana for me at Wimbledon is in several years' time, when our Wimbledon Park project has been delivered, and guests enter into this English parkland with the dapple shade of our veteran oak trees, and everything is in reusables, and it's all powered with renewable electricity, and the players are advocates for sustainable living. I think collectively for sport, it's around really collaborating more. As I said, I'm going to be straight on the phone to LTA afterwards. I think more leadership from the governing bodies, and more collaboration among sport, and more rapid action.
Amazing. Well, what a way to finish such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time, Claire, during a very busy couple of weeks. The last day, you're nearly there.
I know.
So thank you very much. That was Hattie Park, Sustainability Manager from the All England Lawn and Tennis Club. Let me just stop recording. I'll probably redo that bit at the end. Hang on.
Thanks for listening to the Climate of Sport podcast. Please like and subscribe, and get in touch if you want to share information about the work that you're doing, if you want to appear as a guest, or you want to recommend guests, or you just have ideas of conversations you'd like us to have. You can get in touch by emailing info@sportpositivesummit.com.